My name is Dan Keelan. I am the publisher of Workshifter. Workshifter is the company that is organizing this event. First, I'd like to thank everybody who came out this morning. Thank all the people in the back of the room that did lots and lots of hard work till very late last night. And most of all, thank our sponsors who are here with us in the back. ATC Healthcare, Metro Detroit. Make sure you check out their awesome new website. Birmingham Jewelry over here. And Bridge Care Specialists. So thank you to the folks that helped. Thank you. And of course, we couldn't have done it without, in addition to their support and financial support, all the other partners that worked with us, the panelists that worked with us. If you look at the board in the back, folks that are just working with us to promote the event, it's really a community. What's interesting about that is that this event, as it got narrower and narrower, because Workshifter is about the future of work, which is a very big idea. The question about healthcare staffing and what's it going to look like and how do I manage my career and how do I manage people is a narrower, maybe really exciting idea. And as soon as John Petty in the back started talking to people in your community, y'all referred them to the next person. So I bet a lot of you know each other. So it's been a really interesting process of trying to figure out how to put on an event for a very specific community of folks. Workshifter was started during the pandemic. It was an idea that I had. I was always interested in the future of work and career and how do you manage people and how do you manage your own career? And then the pandemic hit and everybody was complaining about working from home. And I was already working from home and I thought, what's the big deal? So let's launch Workshifter. So a lot of the early content was about how do you manage people that aren't in your office? How do you figure out the cybersecurity that comes with having 20 people working out of their living rooms or kitchen tables? And then it grew from that to mentorship, leadership, themes around career. And so Workshifter has, we've got a few publications. Workshifter is our biggest. Workshifter has millions of people following us on social media, a pretty respectable email list. We publish every Wednesday. If you are not receiving Workshifter, you really should be. And there's a QR code or two around here where you can sign up to get the publication. So I start as a publisher from this point of view. It's a really changing world. It's a quickly changing world. There's a focus on what's next. And part of that changing world and what's next is how do I survive? How do I thrive? And that's why I'm really happy that Lisa Minetti's here. Because Lisa has a point of view that connects directly back to how to be a successful person in business, how to manage your own career, how to mentor other people, how to grow your company with a really positive culture that attracts new employees and doesn't scare away new prospects. Lisa is the best-selling author of Me, Myself, and Why, The Secrets to Navigating Change. She's the president of Accelerate Associates, an organizational development company showing businesses how to scale and create cultures of distinction. She's the founder of the Business Innovation Lab Co-working and Conference Center. Lisa is considered by many to be one of the most innovative consultants and speakers on human wiring and business alignment today. Your human wiring dictates the type of environment in which you are best equipped to thrive and succeed, and the kind of environment you prefer to live and work. For the past 20 years, Lisa and her team have shown companies how to scale using their proprietary process, the Entrepreneurial Edge System, and build a culture of distinction through their acceleration model. Her popular book on human wiring, Me, Myself, and Why, The Secrets to Navigating Change, is used as a leadership tool to proactively transform organizations and increase team engagement. Through her book, mentoring, and training programs, leaders experience a significant increase, and effectiveness to scale their companies while building cultures of distinction that make a difference and make a contribution to the world. And I can tell you as a personal note, I sat through some of Lisa's consulting and workshops, and it's the real deal. It really helped me think about my business, myself, and what I need to be doing differently. You've probably seen Lisa quoted or featured in major media, careerbuilder.com, CNN, Fox, numerous podcasts, radio shows across the country. So please join me in welcoming Lisa Minetti.
Welcome, everyone. Good to have you here. I'm excited about the content that we're going to share today. A lot of people ask me, Lisa, how did you get involved in human wiring? How did that all happen? And just like many of you, I enjoyed a very successful career in the corporate world. I navigated a lot of organizational change, whether it was mergers, acquisitions, divestitures. Anybody going through that right now? Show of hands. I know several of you are, yeah. And it can be a very tumultuous time if you're going through that. And the information I'm going to give you today is going to help you navigate that change with greater peace, with greater ease. And I promise also to give you everything I can in the time we have. I just know from experience some of you will want to dive deeper. So I do have a lot of resources to give you today. Most of you have a handout, should be on your seat. We're going to be using that today. That's yours to take with you. We're going to take some notes. But I've had my Accelerate Associates for about 20 years now, but before that, when I had that corporate career, it was in healthcare. And during that time, I did navigate mergers, acquisitions, divestitures. And I found that knowing human wiring was really important. And one day the decision was made to dismantle the division that I worked in. And so I had to lay everyone off. Anybody ever have to do that? Lay somebody off? Yeah, not fun. And one day I realized my position was going away too. We were completely dismantling the division. And a lot of people said, Lisa, you intuitively coach people through processes. You really should own your own business. And I thought, what do I know about starting my own business? I've been a corporate employee all my life. And one day as I was driving down the 275 heading to a networking appointment, I just asked the question, is starting a business and writing a book the right decision? Because I was thinking about writing a book at the time. And all of a sudden in that moment, something popped up from the freeway. It headed straight at me. I just closed my eyes, I put my hands in front of my face, and I heard this big whooshing sound and dinging going around in my front seat. I opened my eyes to find a shattered windshield, a softball-sized hole in the windshield, and a 4-foot, 5-pound semi-truck's tire iron in the front seat of my car. All the while, I'm saying, I'm okay. I got off to the side of the road, landed in a parking lot, called the police, and while I was waiting for them to arrive, I got out of the car to look at the extent of the damage, shook off all the shards of glass, though not a scratch on me, and it was then that I realized how lucky I was. There was a 6-inch gash in the steel hood of the car that tore the metal hood open like a hot knife on butter, actually changing the trajectory of the tire iron, missing me by 4 inches. Each police officer came on scene, they looked at me, they looked at the original trajectory of the tire iron, and they said, ma'am, you're on this earth for a reason. Now, moments earlier, I'd been asking, is starting a business and writing a book the right decision? I decided to start my own business. I did write the book, Me, Myself, and Why, The Secrets to Navigating Change. It became a bestseller next to Jack Canfield's Chicken Soup from the Soul and John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And I had a mentor early on, and he said, Lisa, you intuitively coach those about human wiring, how people interact, how they want to receive their information, and the systems to set up so that people and the systems are working together. Can you teach this? And I developed several proprietary systems. one in the entrepreneurial track and one in the leadership track. And we continue to educate entrepreneurs and corporations all over the world through our work. And you're gonna learn some of our processes, and most importantly, about human wiring specifically today. Because my promise is that you actually have tools, you have fresh new perspectives when you go out and hire, when you're communicating change, organizational change, and even when you're coaching others in your organization. So today you will learn the #1 strategy to hire high performance talent. Who wants that? Yeah. #2, we're going to look at defining specific and fresh ways to be that hiring hero. So you just don't want to hire just anybody. You want to hire somebody who's going to be consistently motivated every day. And how do you create that culture? That culture where everyone is engaged every day. Every day. So let me hear from you, because this is going to be very interactive. And the more you participate today, the more you will get out of today. So let me hear, what are your biggest hiring headaches? And just shout it out. What are your biggest hiring headaches?
Enough candidates.
Not enough candidates. Great, thank you. What else?
Finding the right fit.
Finding the right fit. Anybody, are you having a hard time finding the right fit? Okay, yep, great, thank you. I mean, it's not great, but thank you for raising your hand. Who else?
Finding someone dependable.
Finding somebody dependable. What else? Finding people with the right people skills, right? I think I was sharing with somebody today, you can teach people, you can teach friendly people, but you can't teach people friendly, right? Yeah. So what we're gonna learn today is, in being a hiring hero, interesting stat here, Gallup recently asked over 13,000 US employees what was most important to them when accepting a new job with a new employer. What did they say? #1, of course, pay, right? We've got to get that out of the way. #2, well-being related issues, right? And #3, which we're going to focus on, top 3, a job that plays to their strengths. We've heard about the Great Resignation. We've heard about people leaving during the pandemic and really having time to assess, is this really what I want to do, right? There's reasons too, from a human wiring perspective, why they might be disengaged, because they might not be in the right position. And why does understanding what employees seek from their next job, why does that matter? #1, because it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your talent attraction. What do you think, what do I mean by talent attraction? What do you think I mean by talent attraction? Say again, louder. Oh, you want, yes, attract them to come to want to work with you, right? Yes. Your engagement strategy, it's going to impact your engagement strategies. How do you not only engage new candidates, but then how do you engage your employee base? And #3, your retention strategies. How do you retain your great talent? So I want you to think about for just a moment what might be missing. We always ask, not what's wrong that needs to be what's broken that needs to be fixed. That's an old broke-fix model. What we ask in inquiry is saying, what's missing? And if I put that missing in, that could transform our organization. And I ask you to think about what is missing in your hiring process. Do you have a talent attraction and engagement strategy? Or is it hit or miss? And what I mean by that is I want you to consider, what's your brand reputation out there? Are you engaging talent before they even come to work for you? And how would you do that? A simple step to do that would be sharing your employee news on your social media. Let's celebrate those really great employees that you have. What awards are they winning? What new certification have they earned? How are you celebrating that workforce that you have? Number 2, are you aligning the people with positions, and is each position aligned with your organizational goals? Here's what you hear all the time. I need to hire somebody. I'm overworked. Great. Well, what's that position going to do? How are they going to impact the organizational goals? What's the purpose of hiring that person? You know, a lot of times when we work with organizations, you know, they want to hire that front desk person. And they're like, yeah, but, you know, how's the front desk person, how do they impact revenue? And the first question I ask is, does that person also are they responsible for your supplies, for ordering your supplies? And a lot of times the company will say, well, as a matter of fact, yes, they do. And I said, so they could order a $10 pen or they could order a $1 pen. Does that affect revenue? Then they think, they say, well, yes, it does. I said, okay, every position directly impacts those organizational goals. And you've got to ask yourself, do your managers understand? Do you have any protocols, any systems in place for your managers to assess exactly how that position is going to impact those organizational goals? And number 3, are you engaging? Are you engaging them from the start in the company's bigger contribution in the world? I don't mean your vision, I don't mean your mission, I don't mean your values. I mean your contribution. What is the outcome of your products and services? The outcome of your products and services. And I'll talk about that a little bit today, so that team members see themselves as something, part of something bigger. They want, the new generation does want to be part of something bigger. And it's up to you to make sure that you are articulating that bigger contribution, the outcome of your products and services, so that they are moved, they are inspired, they see you and they say, I want to work for them. Now you're attracting them into your organization. You're enrolling them into your organization. So how do we create that culture where everybody wins? I'm going to share a little bit about some of the case studies of companies that we worked with. And in this one particular company, they had 99% turnover in one department. Now, what's impacted? I want you to think about what's impacted when you have 99% turnover in a department. Go ahead and shout it out. Say again?
Quality of the service. Everything.
Quality of the service, everything. What else?
Consistency.
Say again? Yes, consistency, right? You can't, you might have mistakes and breakdowns from that. A lack of consistency. What else?
Other departments.
Say again?
Other departments.
Other departments. Yes, it impacts other departments. What else does it impact?
Low morale.
Low morale.
Reputation.
Your brand reputation, for sure, right? Yeah, what else?
Revenue.
Yeah, for sure, revenue. Yeah. And why revenue? Because what's happening? Burn and churn, right? The manager of that department can't get ahead of things, right? So they're busy burn and churn and trying to get people in there. So there's a lot of things: training budget, customer satisfaction, client satisfaction, whatever your business is, there's going to be an impact even to the patient. So what we're going to learn about today is about your natural human wiring. Now what happens over time is people learn about trait theory and they collapse a couple things. They collapse behaviors and human wiring. And it really is a distinction. Human wiring is a distinction. It's distinct from behaviors, and it's a nature versus nurture conversation. Behaviors are part of that nurturing environment. The reality is you don't behave the same way you did when you were 18, right? What are those things that influenced you growing up? Just shout it out. What influenced you growing up that changed your behaviors? Your family. What else? What influence? Second? TV could have, yes. Your friends? Yes. What else?
Education.
Education, yes, thank you. What else?
Socioeconomic status.
Yes, socioeconomic status.
Movies.
Movies could impact your behaviors, yes. What else?
Social media.
Social media, yeah. Relationships. Relationships impacted. Yeah, your parents, your culture, all of those things impacted your behaviors. But we're going to make a distinction today on your natural wiring, which is part of your nature. When wiring is measured using something called psychometrics, psychometrics is something you respond naturally to. For example, colors are a psychometric. Smells are a psychometric. Have you ever gone to a department store, you smell the cologne, you love it, you pass it along to your partner and they're repulsed by it? That's a psychometric. And words are a psychometric as well. And so when you take a psychometric assessment, that is a free will assessment, not a forced choice. There are really great assessments out there. Some of them force you into a choice, and you might answer the question and say, well, that's not really me, because they're forcing you into one of 4 choices. It's good, it's valuable, it gets to behaviors, but what we want to do is get to the amygdala part of the brain, the natural response part of the brain. And we can do that using psychometrics and a free will assessment. So a cumulative effect, when you take the assessment, creates your human wiring pattern, and we're going to talk about what that is today. There are 4 major elements that are measured using a psychometric. Number 1 is the autonomy driver. Autonomy driver. You can have a little amount or a large amount of any one of these, or a low amount or a high amount. High or low will not mean good or bad. They all have their unique characteristics. And I'll explain them in just a minute, but there is more information on your handout. Number 2, the second element that we measure is communication. The third one, or C factor, is our patience factor. And the 4th, or D factor, is our certainty or information factor. Now, when we look at autonomy, and on the high side, we see that somebody on the high side and how they are naturally. Now, as I go through this, some of you are going to say, yeah, but I'm like that sometimes. We all adapt. We all adapt to our environment. What I really want you to ask yourself is, who are you really? Where do you really fall, either on the high side, the low side? Think about that, especially when you're under stress, because usually what happens is that hardwiring gets amplified. So if I'm on the higher side of autonomy, if I'm on the higher side, I like a my way orientation. I like my ideas best. I like to create. In fact, I'm motivated to create and act on my own ideas. I like my ideas best, and I will be actively assertive in defending those ideas because I'm comfortable with conflict. In fact, I see debating with someone as energizing for me. But if I'm lower on the autonomy scale, I'm just the opposite. I like a team orientation. I like harmony. I like the best ideas. And if I think that you are debating something with me, I'm going to be passively assertive because I want it. My brain says, this is conflict, and I want to get away from conflict. And so I automatically might agree with you, but go ahead and do what I want to do anyway. because I want to naturally minimize that conflict. Okay, and here you see there's a graph here, W, L, and N just simply means where that person falls. And we can see in this particular case, they fall in the want category. They don't they want their autonomy. So if I was mentoring somebody that was very high in autonomy, they like to create and act on their own ideas. They believe their ideas are the best ideas. What if I try to tell them what to do? What's going to happen? Say again?
They'll shut down.
They might shut down. They're going to be de-energized, demotivated. The best way to measure or manage somebody like that is to say, these are the results we need. I need you to figure out how to get these results. I want your ideas on how to do that. Now they're energized because you're pinging them positively, their natural wiring positively, and they go and they get those results because that's what's important to them. How many of you, just show of hands, think you're higher on the autonomy scale? You like to create and act on your own ideas. You believe your ideas are the best ideas. Show of hands. Yeah. Again, not right, not wrong. And how many of you think you're more on the lower side, the team orientation? You like harmony? Show your hand. Okay, great. Thank you. Just notice. And when you're networking today, just notice. People higher in autonomy like to speak in terms of I, me, and my. They are results oriented. They like more high level conversations. Okay? The second, or B factor, is the communication factor. Now, we all talk and we all think, but this is how you process thought. So if I'm higher in communication, I like to verbalize to crystallize. I want a response. If I'm not getting a response from you, then I might say things like, you get what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to elicit a verbal response from you. I know some of you are laughing because you're recognizing yourself in this, right? Or somebody in your life. You are energized by face-to-face communication. You probably couldn't wait for the pandemic to be over so that you could actually have face-to-face communication. And you paint what's called verbal word pictures. So you might use a lot of and very descriptive words to describe what you're up to, all right? Or describe or get your point across. So just notice, they also talk when they're on the higher side in we and us, even though they mean themselves. So just notice that. Now, whether you're in patient care, whether you are communicating with a colleague or a team member, whether you are, working out of your office and thinking, why am I so de-energized? Well, if you're higher on that communication scale, it's because you're not getting enough face-to-face communication. If I'm lower in communication, I internalize to crystallize. Meaning I give a response only after my thought is complete. So what you might end up getting is what's called that blank processing stare. And it looks like this. So somebody's talking to you, you have that blank stare. They might repeat themselves to you because they don't think that you're getting what they're talking about. You're just internally processing. And a lot of people interaction drains you. This is why you may not want to go out to lunch, because you were with people all day. So you also speak in terms of very direct statements of fact. I was giving this presentation one time in just a room, I don't know, there were probably about 300 people there. And a woman came up to me, she shook my hand, and she said, "You just saved my marriage." And I said, "What did I say?" And she said, "I think I'm higher in communication, and I think my husband is lower in communication." And he gave me that blank stare you're talking about. And she said, "Now I realize when I got that stare, I made it mean Did he love me? Did he care what I have to say? She made up all the stuff about it. It was just, she said, now I know he just needs to process internally. And if I need to say anything, it's, you want a minute to think about that? And she goes, it opened up a whole new opportunity and relationship with her husband simply by knowing that. In organizations, what we typically see a lot of times is the salespeople on the higher higher part of that communication. Look at the accounting people who are in the lower part of that. Not always, but they don't hear anything from people in the accounting, or some of their best ideas are about an hour after the meeting, after they've had time to process. So what I say is, if you want somebody who's lower in communication to participate in a meeting, then put out an agenda first. Allow them to think about the topic and come prepared to discuss the topic. Now you get everybody's ideas, not just the people who are higher and more verbal thinkers, higher in communication. How many of you think you're higher in communication? You like to verbalize, to crystallize, you know who you are. You love face-to-face communication. All right, now, just notice around the room, how many of you, show of hands, are lower in communication? Your best ideas are about an hour after a meeting. Yeah, so if they don't want to network with you during the break, just respect that. Right? Or just understand they might prefer smaller groups. So if your group gets too large, they might exit the group. It's not personal, it's human wiring. The third element is the patience element, and it doesn't mean we can't all be patient at times, but it relates to how we like our work environment, and this is critical, especially to the case study that I mentioned earlier, where the company had 99% turnover in their customer service department. People higher in patience are more patient, more calm, deliberate, sequential. They like predictability. Innately, they like predictability. They like to implement the change, follow the plan. They're more calm. Lower impatient, you are more impatient. You juggle. You have a short attention span. You accept unpredictability. You innovate change. You make course corrections. You have a sense of urgency, and you create interruptions. I had a CEO one time call me, and she said, I don't know what just happened. My very nice assistant just blew up at me. I said, well, tell me what happened. And see, the CEO was lower in patience, very high sense of urgency, always interrupting her assistant, who was more patient, methodical, made a list and did that list in the order in which she made the list. That's who was great for the job, because she could make sure she follows up for that CEO. The problem was the CEO was not managing her the way that she needed to be managed. So what happened is she kept interrupting her, but her assistant's brain was wired for sequence. And once I understood what was happening, I said, hold up. I said, rather than interrupting her every second of the day, could you meet with her in the morning and identify the priorities of the day? She goes, I can do that. I said, great. And can you, if you have to interrupt her during the day from the priorities and you have to shift gears, could you send her an email and say, hey, can you button down what you're doing and let's shift gears, come see me? She goes, I can do that. I said, okay, is there a way that we can look at her performance for the next 30 days and see how this new way of managing her is working? She goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, there was. So we put some protocols in place to manage her performance, managing her, the CEO managing her assistant differently. And what happened after 30 days? She increased her productivity 40% in 30 days. simply by understanding how her employee was managed, needed to be managed, and managing her that way. Okay? So this has results once you understand natural wiring. The fourth and final element is the certainty element. Now, people hire in certainty. You like detailed information. You like proof from valued subject matter experts. You like the rules, the regulations, the structure. You want to cross your T's, dot your I's. You want to make sure you make the right decision. People hire in certainty, naturally need that, and they need training. They need training, they need follow-up, they need feedback, constructive feedback, like, here's what you did well, here's what we need to improve. Okay, very specific and constructive. People lower in certainty, they want the summary sheet. They want to pick and choose proof. They like exceptions to the rules and regulations. They love flexibility. Now, what would happen if I like to give a lot of information and I'm trying to give a lot of information to somebody who wants their information in bullet points? What's going to happen? Just shout out. They what?
They'll forget a lot.
I didn't hear you.
They'll forget a lot.
They might forget a lot. What else?
You lose their attention quickly.
Totally lose their attention. Yep. And so this also not only is when you're doing this verbally, but also in emails. Right? Anybody frustrated by people not reading their emails? Yeah. Yeah, so I invite you to consider, if you're higher on the certainty scale and you're giving a long email with all the data and information, I invite you to consider looking at who your audience is. Okay? They may not be able to, they might glean it, but there is a way to make sure that you tailor that email so it gets read by every human wiring profile. We actually have more information, a free download on that on our website, accelerateassociates.com/hardwiring. We've got several actually downloads in how to format an executive summary at the front so that you get people who have a high sense of urgency, who need to know the results. And then how to tailor the rest of the email so that it actually gets read. So how many of you think that you're higher in the certainty scale, information? Show of hands. All right, how many of you think you're more on the lower side? You like summary sheet. Okay, so now we've got four different elements. We've got the autonomy element, we've got the communication element, we've got the patience element, and we've got the certainty element. What I want you to do is pair up with someone. If you need to turn around, and I want you to identify for each of the four, where do you fall? Do you think you naturally fall either on the high side or low side, not the way you're adapting, but who you really are, okay? And talk about each one of those elements. Give yourselves, about 30 seconds to say, I think I'm higher in autonomy, lower in communication, lower in certainty. So share with the other people around you where you think you fall. Take about 30 seconds each and share where you think you fall. Go. Let's come back. Beautiful, thank you. So I want to hear from you. What are you learning from this? What did you learn maybe about yourself? What did you recognize? Who wants to share? Remember, the more you share, the more you'll get out of today. So who want any aha moments here today?
I think the certainty depends on the situation. So sometimes you only need a summary depending on the circumstance, but other times you need to know the detail because you have to make a more detailed decision.
Great insight. So I want to address that too. It depends on your level of certainty. So if I'm naturally wired, but let's say I'm an expert in my area of expertise, I may not need a lot of information for the very thing that I'm an expert in, okay? And so, but naturally, I might need that information. And that's how I became an expert. But if it's the very thing that I'm already educated in, I'm not going to need that. But just understand, you naturally need a lot of information, but if you already have it on something that you're an expert in, you won't need a lot of that information. Does that make sense? Okay. It was interesting, I met a gentleman for the first time because a lot of people, they're like, well, how do you know when you meet somebody? Again, notice the cues. If they're high in autonomy, they're going to speak in I, me, my. If they're high in communication, they're going to say we and us. If they're high in patience, I met this gentleman in my office and I greeted him and I said, welcome to the office. Come on back to come back to the office. And he followed me, and as he was following me, I noticed his cadence. First cue, and he was like looking around, very much more methodical and very calm. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to manage this, and I'm just going to ping to see if he's actually somebody higher in patience. And I said, how about if I share with you the next step in this process? And it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. He said, oh, that'd be great. And it was like I was speaking his language in that moment. And when you can deliver communication the way the other person needs to receive it, that's the highest form of honoring the other person. Whether that person is your coworker, a patient, your significant other. And when you can align their work with how they naturally execute, again, that's not work. I want to share with you a little bit about that one case study I mentioned earlier. Now, they were hiring. When I went in, they said, we've got 99% turnover. We don't understand what's going on. And in this particular department, it was a customer service department. So what was happening is they got all of these calls in every day on the phone. I said, well, tell me who you're hiring. And they're saying, well, you know, people low in autonomy because we want them to be, they're a natural team player. And that's what we need for this department. I said, okay, I get that. And we want them to be external thinkers. We need them high in communication. I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, because they're talking to the customers. I said, everybody talks and everybody thinks. It's how you process information. But people high in communication naturally need face-to-face communication. This position was not face-to-face communication. It was on the phone all day. They were also hiring people low in patience. So I asked them, I said, why are you hiring people very low in patience? Well, because they have to type on the computer and talk to the customer. I said, well, people multitask. And I said, and high uncertainty, why high uncertainty? And they said, well, because we've got to make sure they give the right information over the phone. I said, okay. I said, but the one person who's been in the department the longest, how is she wired? And they said, oh, we're sure she's like this. I said, well, have you assessed her? And they said, no, but we're pretty sure that's the wiring. I said, well, let's have her take it, okay? So when we did, we found out she was low in autonomy, so that was a match. Low in communication, they're like, wait a minute, low in communication? Internal thinkers prefer email and phone. Higher in patient, which also is a relationship driver. In fact, you want them highest in patience. You get that warmth, the calmness over the phone, the chattiness over the phone, and of course, high uncertainty to make sure that they cross their T's, they dot their I's, they follow the protocols. So what happened was we also looked at creating critical element profiles, position profiles, and how that position would be most efficiently executed. And when we did this, we also used something called psychometric advertisements. So we used words like, are you an accommodating individual? Remember when I said words are a psychometric? It will ping them positively. If they're wired that way, there's a greater chance they're going to respond to that advertisement. So we looked at, are you an accommodating individual who enjoys a team-driven environment? So they get that lower in autonomy, the natural team player. Are you practical, a no-nonsense individual? Do you function best in a stable and defined? Okay, higher uncertainty, defined information, structure, and somebody who's patient as a necessary trait. They're more patient, methodical. The position offers detail-driven job that will inspire and reward a conscientious person like you. We seek that individual with the following work experience and educational background. And here's what happened. We streamlined the interview process by having candidates take the required assessment and had the required background for the position so that it was a greater match. And so standard hiring went to about a 40% match to over an 85% match that that person was going to be aligned for that job. And what happened in this case, when we did this, they went from 99% turnover to 0 in 3 months. Okay, so, and they were happy doing it. Why? Because they got to work in a job that was in alignment with how they naturally execute. Okay, so I think what's important here is to really understand what are the positions that you're hiring for so that there is a greater degree of satisfaction with your employees in the jobs that they're doing. But this is one, and I often say when you work in alignment with who you are, it's not work. It's not work. All right, the other piece of this is enrolling them. I mentioned earlier, not only understanding, they want to work in a job. We saw from Gallup, they want to work in a job that plays to their strengths. These are natural strengths. But you as the employer also have to enroll them. Enroll them in something bigger. And that is your contribution your company is in the world, in your community, in the world. And we look at your contribution as your outcome, as the outcome of your products and services. It's not a tagline. It's something that comes from the heart. It's something that your customers might tell you is the outcome for them. We worked with a manufacturing company on their, it's not really exciting to go into a manufacturing facility, but they manufactured light poles, those big light poles you see in communities when you're driving down Main Street? That's what they did. And, how exciting is it? Yay, I'm going to work in the manufacturing company, right? It's not very exciting. So we worked with them on their contribution, the outcome of their services. And they said, well, we manufacture light poles. I said, no, you don't. You don't manufacture light poles. They said, well, yes, we do. I said, what's the outcome for the communities that you serve? And they said, well, their communities are safer. I said, yep. What else? They said, well, the communities have more opportunities. I said, yep. What else? Well, there's the opportunity and they have pride in their community because it's all lit up. People want to go to those communities. They want to have fun. So you don't manufacture light poles. You create a lifetime of safety, opportunity, and pride. Now, we don't stop there. You've got to infuse this into the culture of your organization. And so you want to be enrolling, not trolling for talent. You want to attract them into your organization. You want to create also that common cultural language within your organization. Now, this didn't have to be a manufacturing. I mean, everybody has safety. Anybody have safety protocols in their organization? Raise your hand if you do. Yeah, it affects workers' compensation, doesn't it? And so what they did is they then integrated that contribution in the world into their onboarding practice. Now think about that. When you onboard somebody, are you really bringing them into an organization that plans to have them, that welcomes them there, that has their passwords to the computer the first day they get there? Are they greeted? Is somebody paired with them, a buddy, to take them to lunch? How are you bringing them into the organization? How are you onboarding them into this bigger contribution that your company has? Are you using that as part of your onboarding process? Are you looking at that to also create that common language? So in this particular case, the organization also created the common language because when the president addressed the organization, he would say, our contribution in the world is safety, opportunity, and pride. And the managers began to ask now the question to align with that internally and said, how can we create more safety? Now it becomes an inquiry, not something broke that needs to be fixed, but how can we step boldly into this contribution that we have in the world? We're not just about manufacturing light poles. We need to create a lifetime of safety, opportunity, and pride. What do we do internally to do that, to expand that contribution? And the managers began to get together and say, how can we create more safety in this organization? Now they're creating new possibilities that are enrolling other people. They ended up reducing workers' compensation by creating this common language and being an inquiry from 19% to 13% in 12 months. So creating that common language has an importance not only for the organization, but for your clients, for your customers, for your employees that see your brand and want to be part of that bigger contribution in the world. So I want to hear from you today. What are your biggest takeaways out of what you heard so far today? And maybe even something that is inspiring you into action. Who wants to share? Yes.
About 15 years ago, I retired from teaching college, sociology, and I was in charge of the hiring committee. And one of the individuals that we interviewed was black, she was young, she was lesbian, and out. And I remember our discussions among our faculty. And this was a word that was used a little earlier. A couple of people said, I don't know if she's a good fit. For hundreds of years or for decades, that has been used to exclude individuals of color, individuals of sexual orientation. We ended up hiding. Any comments?
Yeah, when you look at human wiring, you're not looking at the external factors, right? We're not looking at male, female, gender. It doesn't matter. It's what is that human wiring and how do we need that position to be executed? And I think it gets deeper into who we are as humans and relating to, oh, they're an internal thinker. So there's that blank processing stare. I will honor them by giving them a minute to think about it. And so when you understand human wiring, it really gets to the heart of understanding who they are innately. And when you can deliver that communication the way they need to receive it, now that's the highest form of honoring that other person. Thank you for that question. Yes. Anybody else? What are one takeaway that you got from today? Or an aha moment?
Just that if you can understand the way that they're wired, then you can communicate the way that they need so that they will be more engaged and go along with your team.
Beautiful. Yes. So what she was saying, I'm just going to paraphrase, is when you understand how they're naturally wired, then you know how they best learn and how they're best engaged. That's exactly it. Yes. Beautiful. Yes.
You were talking about how it's important to know yourself first. So that you can then recognize others and then be able to connect with them if they're wired.
Beautiful. Yes. Not only important to understand yourself, thank you for that, but also then how to manage it. I mentioned earlier about the CEO, how to understand how she needed to manage that sense of urgency and manage the employee the way the employee needed to be managed to get the results that they wanted to get. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. And personal development is all part of that. I promised you also takeaways, so I want to make sure I give those to you. We have lots of resources on accelerateassociates.com/hardwiring. There's some downloadables. I mentioned how to deliver the communication, whether that's email, whether that's organizationally. We've got several Wiring Matters download that you can download, infographics rather. And then we also have the healthcare edition of Introduction to Scaling Your Business. The introduction does go through helping organizations create their contribution in the world. And so we have more information on our table in the back. And then also for those of you that are interested in learning more about human wiring, we have our Wired to Win 101 program that's coming up in August. It's a great half-day team building session. Everybody is welcome to that. Again, that's going to be August 16th. More information is available, again, on the hardwiring, or you can scan the QR code. And then I also have my book in the back. Happy to autograph some of those, Me, Myself, and Why, The Secrets to Navigating Change. And it does talk about human wiring in the book. I want to thank each one of you. It's been a pleasure. I hope you got something out of today and look forward to talking to you. Thank you. John?
Lisa
Great.
Manini, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. I'm back. Well, welcome back. This is the Future of Long-Term Care and Assisted Living panel. A little bit about this panel is going to explore the current state of how patient providers, such as directors of nursing, nursing home administrators, and other healthcare professionals are coping with staffing, are developing plans for transitioning patients from hospital to home care and then to the nursing homes, as well as current financial and legal practices to help fund a loved one's care. This panel will also explore future new ideas, such as legislation or practices that are being talked about to help healthcare professionals provide quality care for their patients and make their lives a little easier. So I'd like to introduce the esteemed panelists. We've got Marina Marchese, owner of ATC Healthcare Services, Metro Detroit staffing company. Marina has a master's degree in business and healthcare administration. Upon immigrating to the United States at the age of 16, she worked for many healthcare organizations and clinical professions and gained a lot of experience in recruiting and hiring, and developed a big passion, a passion for helping healthcare facilities find the best employees and eliminating their challenges and simplifying their ability to hire quality talent. Because she was so successful assisting her clients, Marina desired to start her own healthcare staffing company by purchasing ATC, which stands for Around the Clock Metro Detroit franchise. ATC provides the healthcare and nursing home facilities and organizations and helps them staff their facilities with competent employees, and all this makes a perfect fit for incredible client outcomes. Please help me welcome Marina. Thank you, Marina. Next, I'd like to introduce Lee McLeod, Administrator, Executive Director at Canterbury on the Lake. Originally from Australia, if you're wondering where the accent comes from, Lee has been living in Michigan for 23 years. She has been a registered nurse for 41 and a licensed nursing home administrator for 17 years in Michigan. She has worked in many different capacities in senior living, Director of Nursing, licensed nursing home administrator, Director of Clinical Service, and Director of Operations. Her current role is Executive Director at a continuing care retirement community in Michigan, which has 273 units, 74 independent living apartments, 39 assisted living apartments, 32 assisted living memory care apartments, 128 nursing and 128 skilled nursing community. She also has been teaching classes at Madonna since 2011. Please help me welcome Lee McLeod. Next is Shannon DeWall, who is an elder law and special needs planning attorney. Shannon's practice is dedicated to providing comprehensive elder care services that prioritize clients' quality of life, asset preservation, and peace of mind. She is a member of the Elder Law and Disability Rights section of the State Bar of Michigan, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, and the Life Care Planning Law Firms Association. Please help me welcome Shannon DeWall. And last but not least, I want to introduce Dr. Harshini Jayasuriya.
Just Dr. Hershey is fine.
Yeah, affectionately known as Dr. Hershey, thank you. She is the founder and medical director of Bridge Care Specialists, Michigan's virtual discharge clinic. Dr. Hershey has a decade of experience working as a hospitalist, outpatient clinician, a health manager, and program builder. Dr. Hershey completed her undergraduate degree at the University of Michigan, earning a dual degree in biology and women's studies. She graduated from Michigan State College of Human Medicine in 2011 and received early admission into MSU's Family Medicine Residency Program. In 2018, she completed her AAFP fellowship. Over the past decade, she has served as a medical director in various medical domains, including hospital medicine, outpatient care, rural health, PACE, hospice, and public health. Throughout her career, Dr. Hershey has been designing and implementing programs aimed at enhancing patient outcomes in both hospital and outpatient settings. Notably, in 2020, she and her team developed a patent-pending discharge program that has achieved triple aim results. By utilizing a virtual platform, this program has now been able to reach patients across the United States. Dr. Hershey currently sits on the board of the Michigan Academy of Family Physicians and the MHA Physician Leadership Council. Please help me welcome Dr. Hershey. So we'll start it off, but I also find that many of you might also have questions. So while we have questions, please feel free to raise your hand to get this conversation going. So we're going to start off with Marina Marchese, owner of ATC Healthcare Services, the Metro Detroit staffing company. So Marina, can you tell us a little bit, we've heard earlier today, staffing is still a big issue. Over 20 years ago when I worked in healthcare, it was still an issue back then, right? So I think that that's going to be a common theme that we hear, but for different reasons. So how do you find the right people for your clients? Because we hear that that's just a difficult thing to do now.
It's an excellent question, Lisa. In fact, the presentation that you did and what I'm about to tell you is exactly, they just correlate. We use your concept of human wiring every day. Many facilities always, like you said, they have a huge turnover. The way we do it is we take time. We create our own pool of candidates that we constantly 24/7 recruit. We get to know them, get to know their personality, get to know their skill level. We do the same thing on the client side. We meet with clients. Typically, it's people who make decisions, either EDs or director of nursing. And then we'd like to find out about their strategy, the skill level, the personnel level that they're looking for. And then our goal is to actually match who they're looking for with the pool of candidates that we have. So we basically do proactive hiring and recruiting as opposed to reactive. So we constantly increase our pool of candidates. We go through a very in-depth pre-screening hiring process, and we know who we're looking for. We know the type of personality based on our clients' needs, and that's how we, most of the time, do the perfect match. So in a simple language, I guess you can call us a healthcare matchmaking company, and we've been pretty successful. Again, because we've been in business since 1981, and what stands us apart is our reputation, the fact that many of you working in a hospital setting know what Joint Commission certification is. So we are proud of our certification, and then that gives us a lot more leverage in terms of promoting ourselves to new potential clients.
Yeah, and there's a lot of legwork that you do so that, I mean, if that was done by the facility, that's work that you save them.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I think I already passed out many folders, but to those of you who don't have our flyers, and I encourage you to stop by our desk, and then it will actually, the marketing collateral that we included in those folders will actually educate you more and coach you in both. Tell you exactly what's the benefit of using an outside vendor such as healthcare staffing, local staffing company, as opposed to doing hiring directly. In many people's mind, there's this concept of knowing that using healthcare staffing is pretty costly. But we're here, and that's why we included that case study analysis, cost-saving analysis in our folder that will tell you that if you actually go through a company like ours, you actually end up saving money because we specialize in hiring, recruiting. This is our field. So I encourage you to stop by, and to those, for those of you who didn't grab the material, pick up those folders.
Thank you. And this next question goes very related, different perspective. Lee McLeod, the administrator, executive director at Canterbury-on-the-Lake. What are the steps that you take to ensure that you can attract candidates to come and work in your community?
So when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, I was an administrator in a nursing home, and half of my staff left because they were very scared of caring for residents with COVID, and half of them stayed. So I really got an opportunity to analyse why did these staff stay, because in general their lives were very, very difficult. For those of you that went through the pandemic or had staff going through the pandemic, if you remember what it was like with trying to get their school children schooled remotely, trying to deal with loss of family and their family passing away, not being able to go to their funerals, having family in the hospitals. It was extremely difficult, but in spite of all that, these staff continue to come to work. So what I've learned from all that, there's a number of steps, and it really relates to positive connection. The first step really is, how are you connecting with the potential candidate? The second step is, are you embracing that candidate? The candidate is just the same as a client, as far as I'm concerned. If you're looking at a new resident coming to your community or you're looking at a new client, your potential employee is a client. So first step is, how are you connecting with them? When they walk in the door for the interview, what is that experience like for them? Are they, like Lisa talked about, customer service? Are they going up to the reception desk saying, "Hi, my name's Sally, I'm here for my interview," and the receptionist says, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming for an interview, you're not on my list." So the first thing that happens then is that potential candidate is going to be turned off by that experience. So if the receptionist says, "Oh, Sally, it's so nice to meet you. Yes, I'm taking you to the interview room. Lee, if I'm doing the interview, will be with you very shortly. Would you like a beverage?" Now that welcomes that candidate. The next step is, what is the interview experience like for that candidate? And also, are you ready? So what does that mean? Does it mean that that you send the candidate away and say, "I'll call you and let you know if you have the job"? Or are there certain things that you want the candidate to complete so that they know exactly what's going on? I did an exit survey of staff that left, and one of the key things, the common themes that came across was, if I come for an interview, I need to know what my potential schedule is. So I had the scheduler be part of the interview, so there was that positive connection. So every step that potential candidate takes needs to be a positive experience for them. And there are many steps. So once you get through the interview process, once you get through the hiring process, once they go to orientation, what is that like for them? And then when they get on the floor with the next step of orientation, are they having a good, positive experience? And I'm sure you've all seen it where staff show up for orientation, nobody knows that they're there, and they're saying, "Well, who am I supposed to meet? Is someone going to meet me?" And then, that's another part of it, is where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to go? What is my schedule? So if all those things are answered, hopefully then you will secure that candidate. But it only takes one thing to turn the candidate off. And that positive connection is extremely important.
Beautiful. Great nuggets of information there. Thank you for sharing that. I would imagine then people feel from the start part of the organization, part of the community.
Yes, because they want to be welcomed and they want to feel good. But every person they come across, one of the things you mentioned, Lisa, is about, what is the culture of your building? And I've seen it happen, and I'm sure you've seen it happen time and time again. You get them through all the steps, and then they come to their preceptor, and the preceptor says, "Oh, do I have to orient her today? I don't really have time." So what happens then? The candidate's like, "Well, I don't want to be here. I think I'll go somewhere else." So every step is important. Then checking in on those candidates is really important as well to make sure that they're doing okay. And then the other piece that I found when I did the exit interviews was, one of the things that we do at our community is we do a lot of employee engagement in celebrating our employees. And once a month, we do a celebration for anniversaries and birthdays. I usually come in on the midnight shift to meet the midnight staff, and we celebrate. And that was one of the things in the exit interviews that the staff said, what was the thing you liked about working at Canterbury, was I liked the staff engagement celebration. So it's a lot of learning, and I think you have to really listen to what your candidates are saying to accommodate them, because they're not going to stay if there's 15 steps in the hiring process and one of the steps is a negative experience for them.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. A lot of intention around all those actions. Like, it's very intentional. You can see that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to shift to Dr. Hershey. You know, with staffing, we also have to look at how are services delivered and maybe how are they delivered differently. Dr. Hershey, how has the integration of virtual care technologies impacted the delivery of healthcare services within assisted living and skilled nursing facilities?
I think with the shortage of providers that we're seeing in the system, especially qualified providers that are going into elder care, I think virtual is going to definitely take on a larger role as we go. So my group, we're in assisted livings and subacute rehabs virtually for patients. They sign up, for example, the staff helps them sign up online, and we're able to see them whenever they have an acute issue when the doctor's not in-house. So they just come in, we have their chart already ready. It's not like calling Amazon, you know, we already know these patients. So we're able to then modify medications and do things like on the spot. Our goal as a group that I work with is trying to prevent readmissions to the hospital. So being on the hospital side, you know, and then being on the outpatient side, having worked on both sides are working so hard, and there's just not that reach in this gap area to be able to cover a lot of patients. So if you're discharging a patient also, you know, thinking about who's going to be catching them when they leave your facility. Because if there's not someone there, there's a good chance they might have a turnaround and come right back in, and that's going to affect your quality scores. And as we're going into value-based payments in 2025, that's going to be a big deal, huge deal. Because essentially what you're getting paid right now is going to be a multiplied by a factor of how well your quality is, and a big piece of that is readmissions. So when you're thinking about staffing and I think being creative with technology is and embracing it, figuring out a way to have it be comfortable for people, especially with the older generations, making it something that they're not scared of, and then they realize how convenient it is, and then they want to do it like every week. So, but I think it's a really great thing because we're often able to catch things before they happen, and that's our goal, is to try to reduce the number of meds people are on and to try to make complications less.
Dr. Hershey, can you also speak to examples of specific virtual care solutions being implemented in these settings? And what are the benefits to both not only the residents or patients, but also the healthcare providers?
Absolutely. So groups like mine, we accept insurance. That's a big deal to a lot of the residents. That means we're not billing them for like concierge service. So if they need to see us, they're not worried about, okay, who's paying for this? And that's something I'd like to see more of in the virtual world, because it is difficult right now in virtual to navigate the insurance piece. So they've essentially cut insurance out and just charge a fee, which isn't really conducive to everybody to be able to be involved in that. But in terms of tech in general, I'm interested to see a lot of these apps that are coming through, like Caribou, who's helping with staffing of both like assistants and nursing. It's an application that essentially is almost like a reward system for people to come in and interview and stay through the process to be hired. And so it's like a little staff reward system, which has gotten a lot of traction. There's things like that I think we need to be open to figure out, you know, what are the solutions of tomorrow? Because as this generation is getting older, you know, tech is going to be definitely a part of our lives. We're going to expect that. And so shifting towards, you know, being able to accommodate the baby boomers who are, you know, tech savvy, I think that's going to be a really valuable thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. And again, we're going to take questions in just a minute, but before we do, I want to go to Shannon DeWall. Thank you, Dr. Hershey. Shannon, we talk about there's not only impact when we have staffing into the organization, but also on these families, right? So what is the best time? You know, I'm sure you see everything last minute, right? All the people that didn't prepare for this, but What is the best time to get an elder law attorney involved?
Well, ideally, I'd like to have clients come in when they're not in crisis. If we look at when incapacity and dementia are issues, mid-60s, and so like a decade before, that would be great. If people would come see me and we could get who their decision makers, they would want to have, and trusts and wills and all of those kind of routine things in place before they're needed, that would be great. But as Lisa said, most of the time it's in a crisis situation where they've had a major medical event and are now in a hospital, rehab, or nursing home, and don't have the decision makers. Maybe they've lost the ability to choose who those people might be. They might need a guardian. And so we're equipped to help with all of those things. We can help family obtain that guardianship, and then, follow through and help them throughout that guardianship with accountings and whatnot. And I also, along the lines of what Dr. Hershey said, is we also have an elder care coordinator in my firm. So the elder care coordinator can help come alongside and coordinate care and help reduce those readmissions and, get them in proper, we see a lot of clients that don't have the proper care. It's usually less care than what they really need. And so we can do those assessments, get them in the proper care, and hopefully help them age in place as long as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, we had some hands up here.
That's a great question. We started to last week. So we're offering primary care now virtually, because what we were finding is previously as a discharge clinic, we were only on board for 60 days. We were doing intensive care during that time with multiple touch points. But then our goal was to graduate the patient into like a local doctor, but there were doctors to be had for the level of severity they were. They're like, nobody's gonna take me with IV antibiotics or a feeding tube, or, I'm homebound, so the only people that can come is like a nurse practitioner who used to do diabetic stuff, and that's not what I have. So, so we launched that specifically for that reason. And actually, it's actually open to everybody who would want to do that, and we accept insurance. But that came about out of necessity. That was never our intention to do that. We were really focused on bringing the quality scores up for discharge patients, but we felt that was the next step due to the need.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes. Yeah. And I would bet that there's intentionality around the training for that, particularly customer service training. So more than likely you do see that in organizations. So thank you for sharing that. Any comments on that, or things that you're doing, or best practices that you're doing related to customer service?
I would just say that when we're trying to help families find places, that's one of the things we're looking for. So, yeah.
Something the assisted livings we're in really appreciate is our ability to tap families in from out of city, out of state, for have them be involved in care. Sometimes that's the first time they're hearing what's been going on with mom or dad. So that's been a really nice aspect of, connecting people onto the same page. So you have more people invested, in having the same goals.
One comment I would have about that is it's ongoing training. You have to do it ongoing. And I agree, as you walk down the hall, you do want all of your staff to acknowledge who you are. I've been in communities where I've had visitors come to the community and walked all the way through the community and not one person even asked them who they were. So, I mean, it's good to observe that and then make sure you have customer service training on a regular basis.
And Dr. Hershey, perhaps you can start us off with this next question. As we look at technology in healthcare, and I'd like to hear how technology is affecting everyone on the panel, what do you think, what are we going to see with regard to technology? How is that going to impact the workforce or even patient care?
So to comment on my last comment, actually, the point of connecting with families is really helpful for facilities because once they realize how complicated their family member is, they're like, oh, wow, they're being taken care of really well, as opposed to why aren't they doing enough? So it's nice to have, people on board and understanding the situation. But in terms of technology, just looking at the last decade, the tremendous amounts of leaps that we've made, from ChatGPT to have AI, involved in our documentation. If you have providers that are doing documentation of any sort, I purchased something called Freed, and it's F-R-E-E-D, and it essentially does all of our documentation for us by listening to our conversation with the patient, so I'm not constantly typing and I'm looking away. It's things like that that have been really game-changing. Like we've tapped into some Silicon Valley startups to be able to connect to the National Patient Record Database that's coming down the pipe, in 10 years, the interoperability, meaning like data right now at these, hospitals, clinics, subacute rehabs, they're able to transfer up into this database, but right now it's getting stuck there because the flow down isn't, large enough for them to handle the amount of data that needs to come through. But we're gonna see that in the next, 10 years. That's gonna not be something unique to my group because we found a backdoor entrance. It should be everywhere. Like all of the doctors should have all access to these type of records. It just makes sense. So I think as technology advances, I think it's only gonna get better. I see a lot about gear that people are using for the elderly to play games and things. I'm interested to see how that's going to develop, with time, because we're having more tech, influence people coming into homes now, and I think it's an interesting way to keep them engaged.
Marina?
On the staffing side, healthcare staffing, what we do, probably in the last 5 years, I've noticed that, again, like Dr. Hirsch said, technology evolved, and then we always have to go with the flow. So as a staffing owner, we made it, and then, people are making a decision internally here. We decided to purchase very sophisticated app that people, our employees who are our clients, as well as our clients, meaning healthcare facility, communicate through that app. We give access to both parties. On our employee side, we use what we call it a geofence time cards. When they are assigned to work at a specific office or facility, they upload their time card, the hours, into that portal app. And at the same time, our clients, and we keep it very transparent, and our clients are able to see exactly when they clock in, when they clocked out, when they went out for lunch, when they came back. What I would have to say is we eliminated a lot of scam, a lot of fraudulent time cards throughout the years by giving this access to our clients who are able to see who is scheduled, when people clocked in, clocked out, and physically see the actual time card. A lot of executive directors, administrators, LPNs, RNs, busy on the floor, resident care coordinators, they're busy on the floor doing tours or handling residents. So we found the best way would probably is give them this ability to communicate through that app.
Okay.
And then we live in a digital world, so everybody communicates via text.
Yeah, so employees are learning to how to navigate the technology.
Absolutely. So yes, they
Okay.
use that app, and then really helps in from the efficiency and effectiveness point of view.
Wonderful.
I'd like to add to that, actually. You just reminded me, yeah, we use apps too.
Apps too, yes.
But one of the things is when staff are noticing, somebody acting a bit squirrely, they can message us, after 5 o'clock and say, hey, this is somebody who is prone to having UTIs. And then we can initiate, an antibiotic prophylactically if that was part of their care plan with the family. And then we could potentially avoid a readmission.
That's wonderful, and that's how we communicate with our clients. I mean, we are 24/7, so all they would have to do is just click on their app and communicate with us. I myself or my staff would get back to them via, if they needed to talk to us or if it's just a simple decision-making question. And then I like the fact that you're now able to get in touch with your physicians just by going and typing a message. That's
Exactly.
wonderful.
So I'd like to hear from Lee McLeod, from the Executive Director at Canterbury on the Lake. How is technology impacting both the patient care and the employees? Can you speak to that?
So, everyone now is using electronic medical records in the senior care industry. I mean, everything is electronic. And of course, we all have electronic ways of communicating. However, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to recruiting staff and what staff are saying about your community, one of the common themes I get when I'm interviewing staff is, why do you want to come and work at Canterbury? And the very common theme is, because I looked on Indeed and I saw you had positive reviews. So I think as a manager, if you're hiring and you're using something like Indeed or whatever system you're using, it's really important to be looking and seeing what those reviews are, and then responding to the reviews accordingly. I'm sure you all have websites of some kind where there's a lot of communication going on through the websites, and then keeping an eye on the usual social media regarding, what are people saying about your building. There's a website on Facebook called Nursing Home Compare. If you're working in a nursing home, I belong to that. Sometimes you'll see a lot of negative things going on, but you also see some positive things. And that's how really you're communicating with your potential candidates, because, if they're looking for positions and you're communicating back on social media, that's how you're also going to get different candidates interested in your community.
And I just want to hear from you, Shannon. Are there privacy concerns as we go into technology? Are you hearing that as an elder law attorney?
There are privacy concerns. I think though also there's access concerns too. So I know that Zoom has really helped our clients who are homebound be able to meet with an attorney. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to be traveling out to, the community and going to people's homes to see them. So we're able to either connect on Zoom and have an attorney-client relationship, or for those that don't know how to do Zoom, because some of my elderly clients have never even heard of Zoom, I can send a staff member out, and then and they can connect them, and we can do things that way. Also, too, our probate court is all on Zoom. So that's allowed a lot of my clients to be able to participate, which has been really important to them. And our sort of presence out on the internet, a lot of clients get to us because we have really good Google reviews. And so a lot of times it's the elderly clients, adult children, who are finding us that way and connecting us. So technology is really important for us for access.
Wonderful. So I had a question regarding we talk about the different legislation that's coming down in different areas. What is the most impactful legislation that you're seeing that could have a profound impact in the healthcare industry? Little broad question, but I'd like to hear from each one of you.
Probably, I mean, what I'm hearing a lot about right now are cameras in nursing homes. That's probably affecting a lot of our clients and a lot of people who are here. So that's something that's being talked about now.
I didn't hear you. What it was?
Cameras in nursing
Cameras.
homes, yeah.
I think there was a recent posting by the Attorney General in Michigan regarding wanting to see nurses and CNAs in assisted living rather than having unlicensed nursing assistants. And that's something that I'm working to, but of course, there's the cost factor of hiring nurses and CNAs in assisted living because your income is not going to be the same as if you're hiring in skilled nursing. So trying to anticipate how you work through that to meet the Attorney General's recommendations. And that's come through because of numerous group homes have been unlicensed, and there's been a lot of concerns about the care of the residents in the group homes. So I know that that's what she's looking for right now.
And what I've seen in the past, probably in the last 2 months, there is a pending legislation going on that will mandate healthcare facilities such as assisted living nursing homes to have certain number of personnel per shift. For example, if at an assisted living, you didn't really need to have a registered nurse for every shift. Now they will be mandated to have RN on staff for every shift. And so the patient ratio will be, they're looking at the patient ratio. So you will need probably twice as many staff members to accommodate resident cares because the issue's been with neglecting resident care, and especially during COVID due to shortages. Many assisted living in nursing homes feel like it's costly on their end, so it's still pending, but it looks like they may pass it. And then and another thing is I heard that many facilities who are accustomed to using staffing companies by trying to save money were utilizing independent contractors, staffing companies who were employing 1099 employees. And I think they passed that legislation not allowing healthcare facilities to employ 1099. So like our company, we only employ, we're employer of record, and we only employ W-4 employees, meaning we take taxes, and then if our employees work at your facilities, they're fully covered. It is our liability. So that's another thing that, no 1099, only W-2,
Okay.
W-4.
Thank you. Dr. Hershey?
I don't know how much I think it okay. So prior auth legislation, from my perspective, was a really big deal for subacute rehabs because what prior auth legislation that was just passed allowed for was when, a prescriber felt that a medication was needed, but it got stuck at the insurance level where they're humming and hawing about, which one we need to choose. And the patient's decompensating, it's usually the staff that have to take the brunt of that, and to be able to have things go through a lot faster, I think it takes a level of frustration out, from the system, just all around. Anything that makes the system a bit easier, I think, is great. So that was a really big deal on the physician side that we were able to get past.
Great. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, thank you.
Dr. Hershey, so one of the big frustrations I know in the community is that people are not getting approved for the length of stay in skilled rehab that they are historically used to.
Oh, yeah.
And people are discharging before really they're rehabbed. 10 to 14 days, I think, is what people would say the average or maximum is. Do you see that changing at all?
No, I don't. Simply because, the thing is, when we think about historically how things have worked in our country is we had, the greatest generation people up here, and then we had baby boomers who, through their employment, supported them. So let's say you had like 5 or 10 baby boomers for every one elderly, right? And now the baby boomers are moving up, and that ratio is completely reversed, right? We have the same pool of money, but we need to be able to spend it smartly. And so I think they're gonna, not to say that it's always the smart thing or the right thing that's happening, but they're really looking at people who can improve. Are they committed and motivated to want to improve? And can they? What's the predictive value they will? If they're not improving, do they need that level of care? Could they do what they're doing here at home? And I think that's what, when you're, asking for an extended stay, you need to address. Is say this person is improving, and the improvement they're going to have here is different from X, when you change to 3 times a week at 1 hour a day, but I just can't see it from a financial standpoint that that's going to change.
Thank you. That's,
I'd like to comment on that because I deal with it every day.
thank you.
So, we have patients coming into our short-term rehab who are told by the hospital that they have 100 days of Medicare. And then we have patients coming in who've called their insurance company, and the insurance company says, we can skill you for 60 days. So we all know what happens when the patient comes into your community if they're being managed by NaviHealth or they're being managed by the managed care company, that the managed care company and NaviHealth are doing, assessing them through predictive indication and determining that, Mrs. Smith even though she has 100 days of Medicare, we're only prepared to skill her for 17 days. So that's the average length of stay. So that does make it, in everything Dr. Hershey said, it makes it very difficult to ensure that we're providing the care to the patient. And then, of course, after if it's 17 days, then the insurance company or NaviHealth is saying, I'm sorry, we cannot skill you any further. That puts the resident in a very difficult position. So the thing that I've found over the years in dealing with that is the most important thing is to have a good relationship with the NaviHealth person that comes into your community, have a good relationship with the insurance company, clinical care coordinator, make sure there's good communication so that if you observe that Mrs. Smith is not going to be ready to go home in 17 days, don't be afraid to sit down with the clinical care coordinator as long as you can validate why. And sometimes they'll allow it and sometimes they won't. But it is very, very difficult because it used to be that our therapists would focus on returning our residents to their prior level of function. Now therapy's job is to return the resident to the ability for them to be discharged home safely. And what does discharged home safely mean? Sometimes it doesn't seem safe to us. And so that's why that communication is really important. And making sure in a skilled nursing community you have a really good relationship with the home care agency so that because we're all measured under the skilled nursing in our quality measures. If you look on Nursing Home Compare, there are a couple of measures that talk about return to hospital rate, what is the rate of returning to home, and how often is the resident going back to the emergency room. So no longer as skilled nursing providers can we work in isolation. We have to be working with our home care agencies, our physicians, etc., so that we can do what's best for our patient. But sometimes it gets very frustrating because our hands are tied.
And one last question before we wrap up here, and this is Shannon for you. What can we tell families who are worried that their loved one is going to run out of money that might be in one of these facilities? Mm-hmm. What advice do you have?
Yeah, so there could be different reasons why they have that concern. Maybe, as Lee and I were talking about earlier, maybe the resident has no decision makers and they're unable to access their money anymore. And so how do we get decision makers on board to be able to pay those bills. And also, for clients, you know, I mean, the nursing home and assisted living is really expensive, we all know, and not everyone can afford it. So as an elder law attorney, I'm able to help them with Medicaid planning and other resources that are out there, whether it's VA benefits or those kinds of things that can help to pay those kinds of costs. And so, and even for, you know, there's clients that might be eligible for Medicaid already, but have certain assets that just are going to get, they're going to get a Medicaid denial because they've got a life insurance with a cash surrender value, something like that, that they have no idea that that's going to affect anything. And so we can help them with fixing those problems.
Great, wonderful. Please join me in thanking the panelists for their time and advice today. Don?
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Wasn't that a great program? Let's give everybody a round of applause.